Today we're going to talk about her. That's Al-qattan. She's a beauty blogger and makeup artist from Kuwait and has over 2.3 million followers on Instagram. She's also mad that they're trying to get rid of slavery in her country. Breathe in, Anna. She's talking about new regulations in Kuwait that would allow Filipino workers over there to keep their passports, take a break every 5 hours, and have 1 day off a week. It's a tiny step away from what's essentially a slave system. To understand how deeply warped this beauty blogger's views are, you have to understand why these reforms were passed in the first place. Earlier this year, the body of 29-year-old Filipino worker Joanna was found in a freezer in an abandoned apartment in Kuwait. The Philippines then issued a temporary ban on deployment of foreign workers to the country, because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Horrific things happen to women working abroad like Joanna a lot. In 2011, the family of a 34-year-old domestic worker was told she committed suicide just a week before she was due home. When the body was shipped back to the Philippines, the family found it covered in wounds and burns. They also found bruises on both of her wrists, and an autopsy found that her heart was missing and her body had been stuffed with rags. And this is why what this beauty blogger said is so infuriating. Domestic workers are some of the most vulnerable people to exploitation and abuse. Without any sort of meaningful protections, they're at the mercy of abusive bosses. In the Gulf, 2.4 million domestic workers are facing conditions of slavery. When women like Joanna leave the Philippines and travel across the world for employment, they're not doing it because it's easy. They're doing it despite all these risks because they don't have many other options. At least a quarter of the Filipino population lives below the poverty line. More than 10 million Filipinos work abroad, many in Gulf countries. Official remittances of overseas workers comprise 15% of the country's GDP. That's a significant chunk. But it's not just Gulf countries. A recent survey found that a majority of domestic workers in Singapore were exploited. And a 2016 report found that thousands of domestic workers in Hong Kong were facing slave-like conditions. While there are organizations like Migrante International fighting for these overseas foreign workers, the problem with government officials really stepping up to the plate is the power dynamic between richer host countries and poor labor-sending countries. When things go wrong, when people go missing, the governments of these poorer labor-sending countries, like the Philippines, can be slow to demand justice. Their economies rely on these remittances. So bringing it back to Al-qattan, the sad part is, views like hers are not the exception. They're more common than we probably would like to think. They view these women as slaves. They pay good money for them, so they're gonna try to get the most out of their investment. And regulations align with that viewpoint. They support that viewpoint. So while it's great that the president of the Philippines offered free flights home for the 10,000 Filipino workers in Kuwait, it's just a band-aid. So here's my plea. At the very least, be critical of the people you follow on social media. People have already started reaching out to brands that work with her, and she works with a lot of them. They're demanding that they cease ties with her. They're also trying to get her on a blacklist so she can't hire any foreign workers. Let's keep that up. Let's make sure we're not rewarding people on social media who hold disgusting viewpoints in real life.